Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this fireside chat looking at a northern perspective on scaling a business. The accent might give some of that angle away. I'm joined today by Mike Heverin and Dan Price, co-founders of EdTech Scaleup Supply-Well. Founded in 2017, Supply-Well was born out of co-founder Mike's own experiences in education, where he witnessed firsthand the impact that the pressures within school environments has on teachers' mental health and well-being. The response is Supply-Well, helping schools reduce staff absence, improve their retention, and save money on their recruitment spend. Mike Heverin is a former teacher and senior leader with nearly 15 years of experience teaching and leading in challenging environments. Mike is CEO and co-founder, leading on Supply-Well's mission to keep teachers and money in education. Dan Price, hello Dan, has been a successful leader in tech and marketing for major brands, tech companies and agencies over 15 years, building successful teams and delivering strategies for clients including Samsung and Honda. Dan is Chief Product Officer and co-founder, leading on development and marketing. So in this fireside chat, we'll be discussing their experiences of building an EdTech startup / scale-up outside the capital and the challenges and opportunities this has presented along the way. It should come as no surprise whatsoever to hear that the density of scale-ups across the country continues to increase, but it's also apparent that the maturity of the ecosystems that are evolving to support those scale-ups varies enormously across the country. So I want to understand the practical implications of this on businesses that are driving that regional growth. So, Mike, Dan, enough from me. Can you give us a whistle-stop tour of the journey Supply-Well has been on since 2017? And I really want you to reflect on the lessons you've learned in relation to accessing the right support at the right time. Over to you.
Ooh, thanks, Lynn. Dan, do you want to take this one? A whistle-stop tour the last few years. It's been, I mean, in some respects, it feels like it's been a blink of an eye and it's passed. In some ways, it feels like the longest few years of our lives. In some respects, I don't know where to begin with it really. I'm not really sure.
Just, I guess, maybe Mike, from your perspective as a, you've come out of working in education, that your career was in education.
Yeah.
And now you've thrust yourself into this kind of tech startup space. Maybe a little bit on, has it been what you expected? Has the support been what you expected it would be?
I think it has. I mean, I kind of went into it without any expectations really. I just went into it with, I just, thank the Lord that I'm still not in school, in some respects. And I think from the offset, really, I mean, how our paths crossed, I think is a great way to start, probably. We found ourselves, certainly myself, without any kind of knowledge of business startups, how they work, how they function, what support was out there, what wasn't. And it was kind of just, the irony of it is every day was a school day in a million senses for me. I'm sure Dan would be the same as well. But in terms of support that was out there for us and how did that really give us a footing to be able to actually do what we're doing now? The fact that we were part of the Santander hub in Liverpool was absolutely incredible because it gave us office space. As a headline, it gave us office space that we didn't need to pay for, which is absolutely crucial and incredible. And then once you scratch beneath the surface of that a little bit, we find there's other like-minded organizations within that space. There's a cohort there that's together. You've got the expertise and experience of someone like yourself that we could literally call on, night or day if something landed on our desk or we just didn't have a clue or we needed an introduction or whatever that looked like. So, from a very early starting point, we were only actually able to get going and to get started because of support within the city that, you know, that mayor, it was instrumental really in getting us to where we are today.
And how did you find maybe navigating, like I use the word ecosystem and I kind of cringe when I say it because it is one of those words that gets bandied around, but I often hear businesses say that they find it difficult to navigate their support ecosystem because you don't know who to go to and you don't know who you can trust and you don't know who can, you know, help you at different stages of your development. I mean, how do you navigate that? How do you figure that out? When actually, I think the Liverpool ecosystem is one of those less mature if we compare it to London, for example.
It's a really tough one. I think, like Mike said, when you start out, you don't know what you don't know, and you know you need to rely on people that maybe people you know that can signpost you to people. And we heard quite a lot about LCR Activate, which is something that was run out of John Moores University in the city, and we were really fortunate to bump into them, and maybe we might have seen something in the press or something like that about it. But I think you need to use your guts quite a lot when you're first meeting people. You know, it's a judgment of character. There's a lot of sharks out there. I think the very first people we met maybe didn't have our best interests at heart. And you know, within a couple of months of kind of getting started, we had a couple of people offering us investment. You know, we'll give you 50% for 50 grand. You know, lots of different offers like that. And that, you know, we thought about it because that seemed like an astronomical lot of money when we weren't paying ourselves and all of those kind of things. But I think a lot along the way, we've had to trust our guts and we've had to trust our, you know, the relationship that we have, that we, you know, that we can make these calls. And I think what we've realized is we've made quite a lot of mistakes along the way, but we celebrate the mistakes as much as the successes, I suppose, because, you know, you can't succeed without failure. Failure is a key component of it. And the ecosystem is here, but it's a lot of grants and it's a lot of kind of third sector, you might call it, kind of help in Liverpool. You know, those kind of areas like grants and European development money, you know, which is gone pretty much now, and all those kind of areas. In terms of venture capital and angel investors, there are definitely high net worths here, but there's a lot of kind of gatekeepers to that, and there's definitely very much a mentality of a bank mentality. You know, banks are great, Lynn, as we know, but you know, in terms of a startup business, you need someone to take a gamble, because everyone's gambling, really. You know, we're gambling, we're not paying ourselves, we've got an idea and we think we can do it. So we need more of an appetite for risk, and it's just not present. I don't think it's present in the UK, to be honest. I mean, we were very fortunate that we've been out to San Francisco as part of a program to look at how you might raise capital out in the US, and it is night and day. And of course, it is in San Francisco, the epicenter of the tech world. But it's a much more there are more investors, so that means for a more competitive landscape in terms of you know, they're more competitive to talk to startups rather than the other way around here. There's maybe 3 or 4 VCs in the Northwest that we could potentially talk to, but they're much more understanding in terms of understanding what a startup is. It's not like starting a cafe. When you're doing a technology startup or something like that, you know, you need to look at it in different ways. And yeah, so there's that kind of element of it, and things like, what's your valuation? You know, that's a question that we get asked a lot, and I think personally, well, you're the expert, you tell me. It's a point of negotiation, whereas we've had people be really cross with us for being too bullish on our valuation, and calling it a direct quote. Someone called a valuation we gave bonkers. You know, and you know that's fair enough, but you know, it's a negotiation, isn't it? Not just, I don't just have to kind of dance to your tune. You know, we need to work together to find the right level. So we found it really tricky, at finding funding.
Yeah. To kind of echo what Dan said, within Liverpool, it's a great place to be able to access early money. From a grant perspective, though, where there really isn't any risk applied to it from any one individual or institution. And that's fantastic, and it's really good, and it was really critical in enabling us to get to the position that we're now in. I think beyond that, when you first start out, everything is exciting. Everything is exciting. And it still is, of course it is. But I think what we found, certainly being within the Northwest and the Liverpool City region, is that we very much know what we're capable of doing, and we're seeing other people in this space, competitors of ours that are mirroring what we're doing and kind of, stepping to the same tune as us, and copying a lot of what we do in some respects, I suppose. But they're raising money and we're not. And we're thinking, well, how does that kind of happen? And I think what we found is that lots of frustrations are born out of that excitement, because the early money in terms of the grants is fantastic, but it's almost like a series of small bridging loans, but there's not actually enough to get to the other side. And then what comes beyond that, where we are, is there's a little bit of a void that we think needs filling. There's a whole host of people that we've engaged with through the Activate program, Johnny Clark and his team, yourself, Lynne, lots of people who are absolutely first-rate people and know their stuff inside out, back to front. And I think they bear a lot of the same frustrations that we have, that there's a massive amount of talent within the Liverpool City region, oodles of it, and there are lots of people able to navigate, tech startups and other startups and other people through the waters of a startup to a scale up. But there isn't kind of the backing to go with it. There isn't the risk, and that bears lots of frustrations for lots of people, I think. Yeah.
And how well connected do you feel to the broader, again, I'm going to use the word ecosystem, but to the broader VC networks, so taking you out of the Northwest? Because I often hear people say to me, there's not enough money, there's not enough funding available. And there absolutely is, but it's looking for where to find the right funding at the right time. So do you feel connected to the broader availability of finance in the UK?
Well, so in Liverpool in particular, we definitely play second fiddle to Manchester. Because there's such a scene in Manchester, it's a big suck for anything that comes outside the M25. Next stop, Manchester. And I don't want to be like a northerner with a chip on my shoulder. I lived in London for 10 years, and I was a proud Londoner when I lived there. But there is definitely a kind of a sense that we get skipped over a little bit. In fact, the crazy thing is that we've had more site of opportunity in the US and Europe than we have, in London, which is kind of crazy to me, really. We've had conversations with US investors who wanted us to take our idea out there, and it didn't quite work out for different reasons. America's a very fragmented market, 50 states and all that, but we've had more interest from America than we have from London, because we're not connected into it. And I would not know. I mean, I suppose I could talk to a bank or someone like that, but there's no clear path for me to get in front of a VC in London without doing a lot of phone hustle, I suppose. And it feels like if I was on Brick Lane, I might have a better opportunity to kind of get that early stage capital and not be laughed at, but not have someone be angry with me for having a bullish valuation, or trying to see the positive side of my business. Yeah.
It's that combination of anger and feeling slightly patronized, I think, as well, that we often see. Do you think it would be different if, because you're an ed tech startup, do you think you would feel different if there was a stronger sector within the North for what you're doing? Is that important to you? Would that make a difference to you?
I personally, you might differ for this, Dan, but I don't think so. I think what you find within education is the education sector itself is historically not engaged within technologies. moving forward. Certainly from an operations perspective, you're seeing that now with MIS's, management information systems within schools, becoming cloud-based. But historically, they're using, legacy data systems to manage how they function, the day-to-day processes within schools. What we're doing is, it's innovative, and schools, by the nature of the way that the world is now moving, have to engage with tech. So for us, we're saying, we're at the leading edge of innovation for schools and for ed tech. And this is, and it has to be, because there are 34,000 schools in the UK, there has to be a shift in terms of how schools engage with tech. And in order for that to be achieved, innovators like ourselves have to be given opportunities to provide those products and services to schools in a different way. Because as much as schools will have to start thinking differently about how they engage with tech across the entire sector, I think that perhaps maybe investors and VCs and other funders will have to think differently about how they approach ed tech within the Northwest, possibly.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Actually, I don't think it's about sector help. I mean, a good example is the Northern Powerhouse, and that's supposed to be a fund for money. I hope we don't upset too many people here, but a fund of money for people who can't raise finance elsewhere. And that would seem to be the solution. But it seems that the way that that's handed out isn't handed out as the government described it should be. It feels, from my point of view, that my personal point of view, not Supply World's point of view, that it's very much treated as a kind of as a private fund by the people that run it, I question whether it's fulfilling its mission, and it should be easier to access. There's such a long process to go through it, and it just feels very frustrating. We've been part of the way in that journey, on a very disappointing journey with that, and that is my personal experience with it. But it just feels like that there should be some more control and more autonomy in the Northwest, in the city regions, where we can have control of the startup economy and put things in place. Like in Liverpool, there's famously, they were going to spend £5 million on a zip line, which I'm sure would be tremendous fun. But my proposal was to make a £4 million zip line and take £1 million and give £100,000 to 10 businesses. Let's gamble. And I bet you one of those 10 succeeds and makes you more than £1 million. And I think that we need local regions to start taking some of those risks, or having an agency within that can take those risks.
And it's that classic approach to risk, isn't it? Out of every 10, you expect one to fly, 3 or 4 will do okay, the other 5 will probably fail. And that's the kind of expected norm when you're kind of working in this field. Just thinking beyond finance then, there are other things that you need access to, talent being one of them. Has that been harder? Is it easier because we've got a lower cost of living, you could argue? Is the pipeline of talent there?
Unfortunately not, I don't think. I think in particular, things like developers, that's a key one. There is some fantastic talent in the region, but and they graduate from some world-class universities that we have in the Northwest, but the suck of London, the pull of London or the pull of Manchester is really strong. Particularly in Liverpool, we have a real challenge. Like the good devs are working, and commanding a really high price, and as well they should. They're very talented, and all of those kind of things. But there's a real challenge in Liverpool, in particular, of getting grads to stick around and to stay in the city. And it's a fantastic place to go to university, and it's a fantastic place to live. But translating that into being able to get a great paying job in Liverpool, it perhaps isn't the case. I myself moved down to London to get a better paying job from the Liverpool City region, and I've since moved back with my family. But you're always going to go where the money is, and we can't afford to pay as much because we don't have as much funding. It's a bit of a vicious circle in those terms. But there are great opportunities here. There is a short supply of that kind of talent. And that's not to say there's not a wonderful, vibrant, creative city, but the great people we produce tend to go elsewhere because of that.
And it's the classic signs of a thriving kind of support network, which, it is access to finance, but it's also having the larger employers that do appeal to those grads, that will keep them in a location, who then may decide after, 2, 5, 7 years or whatever, that actually I don't want to work for this big corporate anymore. I'd much rather go and work for a smaller company. And that's all part of that wider ecosystem that perhaps is, again, less mature in some areas of the North. Although I think last year's Scaleup Institute report said the Northeast was one of the fastest growing scale-up areas in the country, which is brilliant. So maybe we need to go and pay a bit more attention to what they're doing, perhaps. And I think, in terms of, I guess, the third component being, customer acquisition, Michael, you've come from a school environment, and therefore you know what the challenges are in terms of getting a school to buy into anything. You touched on it earlier, but to acquire any products and services. How have you found that? You're a new entrant into the market, you're doing something differently, you're disrupting how recruitment is managed. How have you found that aspect? You're having to learn this from scratch, really, aren't you, in terms of your sales and marketing?
Yeah, I think what's critical about it is, from kind of as a values-led organization with a real purpose, there are some schools that we wouldn't necessarily want to work with, and lots and lots of schools that we would absolutely want to work with, and we do work with. I think what we've found is, we use the word ecosystem quite a lot. When you work in a school, that's the world. You think that you can't drink a cup of coffee hot, and you can't go to the toilet when you want. So you're literally running on a Victorian system of bells for when you can and can't move around, and when you can and can't do things. And I think that habitual nature and that kind of way of the world is kind of that's how it is. I think what we're doing is we're going into schools and saying, look, there is a different way to do things. You absolutely don't have to constantly rely on a historical relationship that actually is pretty bad for you in terms of the amount of money that it's sucking out of your school, and the amount of money that it pays the people that you put into the school. And also, we can really help you to reduce your absence whilst keeping money in your classrooms. And it's, I look at it from a very simplistic viewpoint in terms of, we can solve so many problems for schools, and we are solving many, many problems for schools with a simple piece of kit. It's very intuitive what it does, but from a user perspective, it's so simple. And it's literally saving hundreds of thousands of pounds with the schools that we're working with currently. But what you can find is that you will literally go to some school leaders at perhaps maybe a group buying level and say, look, you're currently doing this and it's costing a lot of money. It's not good for you. It's not good for your teachers. It's not good for your students. We've got this. It's really simple. And it can solve those problems, and it will save you money, reduce your absence, all these kind of things. It will improve outcomes for young people. And it's kind of, well, but we work with these people, so we're going to stick with them. And I'm thinking, why not? And I think there's a sea change coming in terms of how schools engage with technology and how they are more progressive and forward thinking. And there are lots of school leaders out there now who are doing that and getting on board with it. But for us, it's very much a challenge of that kind of, how do we break that habitual nature? How do we say to a sector that is not particularly engaging with technology, look, come with us, let's help you with it. It's very, very simple, and it will actually increase the outputs for you, and will save you money, etc. So, there's many challenges associated with working with schools, but the ones that we embrace, and we really enjoy working with schools and helping them see the benefits of technology.
Michael, you touched on being purpose driven. So I just want to go back to maybe that in relation to the funding question. Do you find that is another barrier potentially to investment? Are we finding that there's enough people who get you and what you do and what you want to achieve?
Sorry, Mike.
I was just going to say, I think you have to speak with a different hat on to different people. You know, if you're talking to a potential investor, they want to know what they're going to get from it, you know, on the whole, and it's not the same for everybody, but fundamentally, if you're putting £10 in, how do I get 100 out of it? That's, you know, in very basic terms, what they would look to see. You know, I come at it, you know, and they will say, well, what do you want from it? If you're, you know, if we put £10 in, how can we all leave with £100? I look at it from the perspective of, are we in this to make money? Well, I'm in it fundamentally to make a difference. I'm in it to keep, you know, £1.26 billion left our schools, LEA schools, not including academies, in one academic year on recruitment and supply costs. It's billions of pounds from our education system, and hundreds of millions of that money leaves the education system in fees to third parties. Why? Why can't we do what we're doing, make an absolute real difference, keep teachers in the classroom, reduce absenteeism, increase attainment for young people, keep hundreds of thousands of pounds and millions of pounds in our schools? And why can't we do that whilst keeping some investors happy at the same time?
I think one of the strange questions that we found when we first started was people kept asking us, you know, what's your exit plan? And we were like, well, we haven't even started yet, you know. I'm having to think about me leaving before you've even before you've even begun. And there is a lot of emphasis on, you know, you're going to do this for 3 or 4 years, then you're going to sell it, and then you get off. And you know, that might be what happens, or it might not. You know, we might ride the train all the way to the end and see what that is. But of course, investors want to see their return, but there is a bit of a power imbalance in that, and particularly when the ecosystem is not there to support you. I think that's it. Is that we very much have a kind of a funding-led mentality, and there is no reason why we can't do both. There is no reason why you cannot have profit with a purpose, or tech for good, or all of these things. And there are investors out there that get it. And in fact, we spoke to one yesterday, and it was fantastic to talk to them. You know, that they were very purpose-driven as well, and they're great conversations to have. But you know, we all want to make money, but we want to change the world as we do it.
Yeah, and you're kissing a lot of frogs is my favourite phrase along the way, trying to find that person or that, you know, that.
Our princess is yet to materialize, but we feel like we're getting close. We're going to be going on some, start dating some more frogs in the near future.
What a wonderful image. Just touching on again that whole kind of purpose-led piece and the tech for good. Was that something that you thought or that came across differently when you were over in the US? Did you feel that there was a different kind of?
They literally said, just forget it, just don't talk about it. It's great, but don't talk about it.
Yeah, what we took away from San Francisco was very simply, an investor will look at you and say, have you got an idea that will work in a market and product market fit, and are the founding team investable? They're not interested in profit. They're not interested if you're making a loss or millions of pounds loss or whatever it is. They're just interested really in those kind of 2 or 3 things. And if they have that, and you are the commodity. If you start off in San Francisco, you're the commodity. If you've got a good idea in an investable team, or founders or co-founders, if you get one offer on the table from a VC, you will instantly, obviously, you know, not verbatim, but you'll then get 3 or 4 offers, because the others will go, oh, yeah, we don't want to miss out on that one. Let's throw them an offer as well. You flip it over here, you know, it's as Dan said, it's night and day, and it's that very kind of East Coast mentality within the US as well, is very much kind of the European and the UK version of it as well. But yeah, it's a very, very different arena over there. And they were like, yeah, obviously it's great that there's a purpose behind what you're doing, but we're not interested in that. We want to make money or not. And I think where we are, we're very idealistic in what we want to do and what we want to achieve. And I am confident that there are the right investors for us out there who massively believe in the purpose that drives us every day. And if we get that, then there's absolutely no reason why everybody can't be happy.
So I guess maybe we're talking about less of a, north-south divide when it comes to support and ecosystem and everything else. It is actually larger than that. It's a you know.
Unfortunately, I think it's both. And
Yeah.
and it's not to say that San Francisco is ideal. You know, it's really not. You know, but I think their attitude to risk is one that that should be explored. I think there is a north-south divide, and you know, and a kind of Manchester-Liverpool ship canal divide as well. You know, I think
probably a north-south Liverpool divide as well. If you yeah,
and there's a red and blue divide as well,
and a red and blue, of course.
Yeah, but yeah, it is tricky. But that's not to say that Liverpool is a unique case in any way, shape, or form. Everywhere has its challenges,
Yeah.
and it should. I think autonomy for a region is the way to go. This is not something that you can deal out centralized. I mean, it's wonderful to win an Innovate UK grant like we've just done. You know, plug for us. But having some autonomy within and to be able to encourage lenders to have a more progressive system and to facilitate that ecosystem, to allow that to happen, to allow failure to be absolutely fine as long as overall we're winning. That's the attitude that we need across the UK,
Dan.
across the world.
No, I think we've got our message to wrap up. I think that is the perfect way to end. I love this idea of autonomy, a message to the regions to take some more ownership. Let's hope we've got some in the audience that are listening. So Dan and Mike, thank you so much. 30 minutes has flown by. I just wish you the best of luck. You know that I'm always there to support you and back you when you need me. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.